actually never prepare streams beforehand, but because you're such a special guest, I went above and beyond today. Yeah, it's
Well, I
impressive,
mean,
isn't it?
I've never been on a stream, so
Well, this is your first ever Twitch stream, so I think the community here is very excited to have you
I'm
there.
very nervous, not going to lie.
Really? Well, you should check out people who are saying hello if you want in the live chat. They're putting their full caps on, so this is good. Let me just adjust your volume.
This is so weird because, I've only seen you do streams before.
Yeah, I know. You've been like hanging out before when I've been streaming, and now you're actually the real superstar on stream. So I think after this session, people will be more interested in you than my chess streams, but that's okay.
I don't know about that.
Lucy Guo, ladies and gentlemen, she co-founded Scale, which is worth at least $1 billion now. She was also Forbes 30 under 30. She was a Theo fellow, but she cannot manage to not cut off the top of her head on the webcam. No, I'm just teasing. Lucy, thank you again for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Like I said, anything for you.
Aw, okay, chat. Well, we'll give Lucy a warm welcome. So I thought it'd be really cool to maybe start off a little bit with your background, because I know you initially ended up going to Carnegie Mellon to study computer science, and then you ended up dropping out to do the Theo Fellowship. Can you give us the backstory and how this happened?
In high school, I guess I found out about the Teal Fellowship in high school because I got invited to a hacker house called Rainbow Mansion at that point in time. And then they invited me to a Teal Fellowship summit. I think this was senior year of high school. I could be wrong. So I go, and then it's always been on the back of I went, and it's been on the back of my mind since then. So I believe that I noticed that the application deadline was like midnight one day. And I was like, hey, I think I'm just going to like apply YOLO, whatever.
On a whim? So you applied to something that requires you to drop out of college and start a company on a whim?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't even know what I wanted to start. So I just used a hackathon project I had worked on like 2 weekends before to apply with.
And what was the project that you applied to the Theo Fellowship with?
It was educational games. So it was like multiplayer games to be able to learn fun facts, I guess.
Okay, so you're making learning fun, which is something that we try to do here as well. So it's good to hear. And I see a couple people in the chat who maybe don't have context for what the Theo Fellowship is. So the Theo Fellowship was started by Peter Thiel. He was one of the founders of PayPal and of Palantir. And basically, he gives people, is it 100K?
Yeah, it's 100K.
It's 100K to drop out of college and work on a company instead, because he thinks that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, the only way to figure it out is actually to do it. So it's kind of a unorthodox idea, but one that you decided to go for anyway. So did you get into the Theo Fellowship on your first try?
Yep.
Just that easy? Okay, now come on. How did that happen? I mean, it's super selective. I thought it's something like 1% of applicants get in.
I actually don't know. I think I had a relationship with the people who managed it at that point in time because I met them in high school. I assume it was maybe my hacker reputation. So I was going to a lot of hackathons at that point in time, and I was winning in a lot of them. I wouldn't say it's because I was the best hacker. I think that because I had a design background, I realized that it's really easy to impress judges by just making an iOS app that looked really pretty, because they see a lot of these apps that look really ugly, and they come to you and they're like, oh, wow, like this is gorgeous. We can't believe you did this in 48 hours. So got a lot of awards through that. And then when I got invited to the finalist round, and the finalist round was like a 2-minute pitch, I guess, on stage on what you're building. And then it was just mixing and meeting all the other fellows who then, from what I hear, vote you in or out.
Interesting. Okay, so you basically already had a background in developing these kinds of applications when you got in. Was that something that you self-studied? Or was it taught like computer science in school?
I learned how to build iOS apps specifically during hackathons or web apps in general, but I was building a bunch of stuff back in elementary school through high school.
Got it. And I'm just kind of scrolling through your website right now on your current investments. But we'll get into that.
That's super old. I wouldn't go with any of those. Yeah.
Okay, we're not talking about these. Okay, don't worry. We'll just switch back to the full scene then. So
you talk about the other investments. We did one of the hottest ones in Silicon Valley. It got leaked on information, but Pop Shop Live.
Oh, that's the one
Yeah.
that you're doing shopping online with like live streaming, right?
Yeah. So we were in an earlier round, and then that one ended up popping off. So really excited about that one, and then a few other random ones.
Well, we'll,
Most
we'll
of them
get
are
to the
boring. Most of them are like
we'll get
goofy
to the
stuff.
angel investing, but so you got into the Theo Fellowship, and then what ended up happening with the first, I guess, company that you worked on?
Oh, yeah, that was another failure. So we tried to do, I guess it was a two-sided marketplace for food delivery. So,
So basically, the first company that every college or high school student comes up with, right?
yes, but it actually worked for like a little bit. So people would make food and then sell it to students. So we targeted sororities that were in a competition trying to fundraise the most money. So we had all these sorority girls baking cookies and selling them. I think like $5,000 worth of cookies ended up being sold on the first day.
So $5,000 worth of cookies were sold through your app on the first launch.
Yes.
That's a
But
pretty
we
impressive
also had a
launch.
really bad bug that allowed people to get unlimited free credit.
Oh no! So did you end up having to pay people for their cookies?
Yeah, it was not the greatest.
It was
So
not.
there's a lot of shit, but then afterwards, people are making like $100 an hour making food and selling it.
Okay, and then what ended up happening to the app? Why didn't it take off?
Yeah, then we were like, let's go to expand in LA, and we couldn't really get it off the ground there. Or we had sororities that wanted to work with us, but then we ended up not partnering with them. And then we realized very quickly that it was actually not legal because so you needed to like at this point in time
Do you want me to cut the stream now, Lucy? No. It's just for a story. They only did legal things, okay? Twitch terms of service, continue.
So anyways, yeah, you need actually like a commercial kitchen in order to cook and sell because of safety reasons. I think they recently changed a law such that you can actually make smaller batches of food in your home and sell it, but the law is still pretty iffy. So it was just like a startup that couldn't exist. There's another one that worked on the exact same idea in LA after, but they also had to shut down due to legal reasons.
Due to legal reasons. Okay, that's fair. I mean, I know a lot of startups, when they're getting started, occasionally fall into a legal gray area, to use a euphemism there. But it seems like this wasn't one that you guys could overcome.
Yeah, because it actually has to deal with people's safety.
Got it. So you said you did the Theo Fellowship right out of high school?
No, right out of college.
Right out of college, okay.
I was technically in my senior year when I dropped out, but I only did college for 2 years.
Okay, so you dropped out your senior year. You ended up taking 100K for the Theo Fellowship. You worked on this food delivery app, and then it didn't pan out. So what happened? You didn't go back to school. I know that.
Yeah, I quit the Teal Fellowship.
You quit the Theo Fellowship. Were you freaked out at all that your parents? I know it put a lot of pressure on you for dropping out of college and then continuing.
Yeah, I
to
mean,
do
my
so.
parents were like elated that I was going to go take a regular job.
This stage is when you started working at Quora and Snapchat, right?
Yes.
Got it. So why did you decide to go work right away instead of going back to finish your degree?
College felt useless at that point in time, and I'd rather make money than pay money. So, and I felt like the job offers I was getting were actually a higher compensation packages than what I would have gotten going to college and completing the degree because people thought I'm not a prodigy, but I think they assumed I was a prodigy because of this Teal Fellowship, and that felt like it was better on paper than getting a degree.
Interesting. I always think that to some extent, success is something that compounds, especially in Silicon Valley. Like if you have one app that does really well, or if you get into something prestigious like the Theo Fellowship or Y Combinator, usually people tend to trust you a little bit more later on. What percentage do you think it's the perception people have of entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley versus what they are actually able to accomplish?
I want to say it's very tied. Like if the perception of someone is very high, I think entrepreneurs are generally very good salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
So they're able to sell a certain persona. I mean, they need to sell their employees, their product, etc. Like if you were to narrow down skills wise, like, hey, is this person like a really good engineer? Are they going to perform as a good IC? That could be very different to like whether they make a good entrepreneur or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. Being a good engineer versus being a good engineer at Google versus a small startup is going to require a very different set of tasks. Okay, so then you ended up working at Quora and at Snapchat. When did you start getting the itch to start a company again?
While I was at Snap,
While you're
yeah,
at
we had
Snapchat?
side projects every single weekend, and at that point, I was like, I think I want to apply to Y Combinator, and it kind of happened suddenly. I was in an Uber, and my Uber driver was like, "Oh, have you heard of Paige Craig?" And I said no. And Paige Craig apparently coined the term Silicon Beach. So I look him up on Twitter, and he's actually following me at this point in time.
Already?
So
Okay, so that's
yeah.
a little bit suspicious that your Uber driver already knows who you are.
Well, no, he did. She asked if I knew Paige Craig
Oh,
because
okay.
we're talking about tech. Yeah. So then I slid into Paige's DMs, he's saying like, "Hey, I'm thinking about quitting Snap to start a company," and I ask him for advice, and then we meet, and he offers a check.
So you got a check from somebody before you had the idea to of what you were going to work on, or you pitched him on it?
Now I told him I wanted to leave Snap, and then I very quickly made a deck in like a day of an idea that didn't like the product did not exist. I just did a few mock-ups, threw a deck together. I was like, this is what I'm thinking about maybe working on. And then yeah, I mean Paige invests in people, as do a lot of early stage investors, because people pivot all the time, right? But if you can get it in at a low enough price, then you're betting that that person will create something of value in the future.
Yeah, and that's a very important point for people who are maybe less familiar with early stage investing. What investors usually look at the most are the actual people because there's so much uncertainties, and sometimes you're raising money pre-product or like very early on, so they're really more counting that this is the right team that has the expertise to be able to have, you know, the best chance that this is going to work if it's also a good idea. Because otherwise it sounds like, wow, all of these things are like you're playing life on easy mode, you know? It gets into the Theo Fellowship right away, does a 1 day deck, gets a check. But I think people were willing to invest in you and trust you because you also already had this reputation and people knew what you were able to accomplish in the past. So it's kind of an easy pitch. And, you know, I guess they were right when you see what happened to scale.
Yeah, I mean, that investor made a great return on his investment. I calculated it the other day. I was like, wow, this is the best ROI ever.
Well, yeah, you need to have those unicorns in your portfolio, I guess. But
Yeah.
coming back, so what was the idea that you pitched this one when you took your next check? Was it the starting of scale or was it something else?
Oh, it was so dumb. It was this app called Ava, and the idea was that it was essentially going to be a better ZocDoc, and
Wait,
we
a
were going to
better
be
what? Sorry?
a ZocDoc.
ZocDoc.
So
So what is ZocDoc?
ZocDoc lets you find doctors.
Okay.
So yeah, the idea was that it was like, think of it as like a Yelp for doctors, but then
Yeah, and I'm
we
going to pull it up on the screen as you talk about it.
Okay. Yeah, but we wanted to make it such that you could search based off of procedures.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea came about because I was like, okay, I had a jaw surgery, but like
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to find the best doctor for like jaw surgery, not like a random surgeon that was rated high but never did jaw surgery. We tried to do that, and I think just very quickly realized that young people don't really go see the doctor. It wasn't something that was going to be an app that people would use recurringly. 2 weeks in, we're like, this is dumb. We got to change ideas.
Okay, so did you accept the check from him and then work on it for 2 weeks?
No, so we accepted a check from him, but we actually we lowered the amount we were willing to give him because we got into Y Combinator, and we decided we wanted to do YC, and we didn't actually need the check, but we took it because we liked him as an investor.
Got it. So this initial idea that was going to be a better version of ZocDoc is what ended up turning into scale later on.
Yes.
Got it. So what did you apply to Y Combinator with? Was it ZocDoc or was it the other idea?
It was lockdock.
Okay, so let me just give people a bit of context. So Y Combinator is an accelerator, and basically they started a lot of years ago. I don't remember exactly how many, but they take cohorts of startups and they pair them up with mentors, and then they have like 3 months to prepare for pitch day, which they now pitch in front of something like 800 investors. And it's one of the highest rated accelerators there is out there. They've invested in a lot of companies like Reddit and Airbnb and Twitch, and the list goes on. So they're probably one of the best performing funds on top of also being an accelerator. And this is the one that Lucy got into. It's super competitive to get into as well. I think also it's like 1% or less. And what they pitched in initially was the ZocDoc idea. Okay, so you were at this time were working with your co-founder Alexander Wang, right?
Yes.
So maybe before we get into what you did, can you tell me a little bit about how you met your co-founder and how you decided that you guys were a good team?
Yeah, I met him at Cora, and I guess we became friends because we were both the young people at Cora that didn't finish college. And then one day, I think that we were just like, hey, let's like, I want to start a company. You want to start a company? So we started working on side projects together. And then we applied to Y Combinator together and got in. And there we have it.
And it's interesting that you say that the two of you joined because you wanted to start a company together. I remember my freshman year of Stanford, I was looking through like the Facebook group, and people were like, "Yo, does anybody want to start a company together?" And in my little naive head, I was like, "What? Do people just start one before having some kind of deep insight?" And I feel like there's several types of founders. There's founders who have some kind of insight. It's a space they're passionate about and they end up working in it. And then there's the group of people who've just always wanted to be entrepreneurs, and somehow they just think of what a good company would be and they make it happen. Do you think it's more common to have started with an insight or just wanted to start a company for the people who are
I think it's more
successful?
common to just want to start a company. I think that the people that wait for an insight are actually generally more risk averse. That tends to not create very successful, or like it's harder to create a successful company when you are risk averse. And then I think there are two separate founders where like one type of founder, it wants to create something or like wants to do something in a field that they're very passionate about. And that might mean like having that insight or just brainstorming and like they still like start the company, but they spend a lot of time brainstorming versus their founders are just like, we want to just make a bunch of money and be good founders.
And we'll come back to the YC story right away, but this is kind of an important point. You're also an investor now, so you have the angel investor point of view. Do you not think that VCs are kind of reluctant to fund founders who they feel like started a company for company's sake versus like an area they've been working in for a long time?
I don't think they're reluctant to. Actually, I personally love founders that just want to be founders because I know that they're not going to quit and go work somewhere else, which is what happens a lot. Like, I think perseverance, if a founder has enough runway to be able to persevere forever and they're the type that will persevere forever and they're smart, I think that they will eventually be successful and that most companies fail because founders give up.
Yeah, I definitely agree that most founders fail because companies give up. And I guess it's interesting to hear your point that the people who just want to be entrepreneurs are not going to give up because at some point I feel like it gets so hard and they have to have that North Star that's driving them to keep going even when there's like fires all around the app. And I was always curious if the founders who persevere are able to do it just for their pure love of entrepreneurship or if it takes more. But I think we got your answer on that. So that's good to hear. Okay, so let's go back. So you were applying with Alexander to YC, and then you guys got in with your ZocDoc idea. How did you end up coming to Scale, which for those of you who are watching who maybe haven't heard of Scale before, let me give you guys some context on that first. So Scale is a data platform for AI. And just to give you guys an example of what that means, say you're trying to train a computer vision algorithm, you're going to need a ton of data points to be able to get accurate results, and they are able to help pair you with people who accurately label that data. So like photos, this is a cat or this is a dog, machines need the correct answers first. So how did you get to the Scale idea?
Yeah, so we were spending a lot of time calling doctors on a phone, and we're like, man, it'd be really nice to just have an API for humans. They'll call the doctors for us. So then we thought about it, and then our roommate was like, haha, that's funny, API for humans. And when he said it, we were like, that sounds really controversial. I bet this would actually do really well on Product Hunt. So we quickly made a landing page and a pretty janky API. And then just threw it up, and we still were sort of pivoting a ton, but this is when Excel reached out and they're like, hey, had a few conversations, they want to do our Series A. And then I later found out that it was because we were known as a team that was pivoting a ton, and they were like, maybe we can get them to stop pivoting if they get money, which worked.
Oh, that's hilarious. So they love the team, but they wanted to make sure you guys were settled on an idea.
And they wanted us to specifically work on that idea. So they're like, if we give them money, they will settle down on this idea.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
so one thing that's fascinating with Scale is that you guys were actually competing against Amazon. So Amazon had a service, Mechanical Turk, which was very similar to what you were doing with data labeling, except for the fact that it was harder to use. It wasn't in real time. Were you nervous at all to compete against such an established competitor?
No, I mean, we didn't really view Amazon as a competitor. We definitely viewed Crowdflower as a competitor, though. But and this is probably part of my investment thesis nowadays, but I think that if you copy someone else's idea, but you do it better by moving faster and hiring smarter people, you can win.
Oh my gosh, that is a very unique insight. And I've heard it a couple of times, but I feel like this is not popular opinion against most
Yeah.
investors in the
It's probably
valley.
a little contrarian, but I do think that I invest in the most brilliant engineers I can find, and brilliant in the sense that they can build very quickly themselves, but they're also charismatic enough to hire people much smarter than them. And we were able to just hire such a strong team right off the bat, and we were building so quickly that we eventually surpassed Crowdflower, and Crowdflower started copying us instead.
Interesting. Okay, so you launched Scale, you got investors pretty early on, and when were you sure that this was going to work or that you had actually found the product that has product market fit?
It was probably when pretty early on, Cruise decided to become a customer. We're like, oh wow, the self-driving car market is huge, and then we started getting other self-driving car customers on. And then when we launched the lidar labeling, it kind of blew up because we were the only company that was really doing lidar labeling. So that's like when it was obvious that it was working.
And a lot of B2B, so business to business companies, for those of you watching, Lucy, I know you know, end up joining YC because then they can sell to other YC companies. So there's a ton of companies in the cohort. Was that, and I know Cruise was also a former YC company, did that help you a lot in this process?
I think so. Like we literally scraped. So before we even knew what to focus on with Scale, the API, like we did just copy the endpoints that Crowdflower had. And then we found every single founder's email on YC's internal company forum. And we just mass spammed them, which
So
I don't
you
think.
spammed the entire YC founder directory.
Yes, we spent the entire YC
Okay.
basically asking them like, "Hey, would you pay for this? And if not, what can we do with humans that you would pay for?"
Oh man. Well, and actually, the startup that I was working on at the time that failed, we were doing like an AI messaging platform. So we actually ended up using Scale as well, just because it was so much better than the other options. Even if we were kind of skeptical of a startup relying on a startup, because that just increases, the lack of predictability there. But we did it anyway because your product was just so much better.
Well, that was because it was me doing the task.
It wasn't you. So were you the one who was actually doing the data labeling to begin with?
Oh yeah. Like we
Interesting.
had a Twilio, we linked to the Twilio API, and it would literally call me like in the middle of the night going, "Wake the fuck up, Lucy. Time to go do the task."
And to give people context, so Twilio is basically an API you can use to send text messages. So we were helping social media influencers directly text their fans, and then we'd help them reply kind of like a bot based on what they say. But we would have to categorize all of the incoming text messages. So we thought we were, working with Scale, and they were categorizing, and they were, but it was
I was
actually
doing this every
Lucy.
single morning. I was like the first.
Oh no! So you must have read through so many like 12-year-olds telling their favorite TikToker, "I love you so much."
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh, that's really
Good
funny.
times.
That's really funny. And I feel like so many startups have to go through that Wizard of Oz moment where you're so focused on selling people on the vision, but it takes quite a bit of work to get there. So behind the scenes, you're just willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen. But throughout your story, I think what strikes me is like how easy success kept coming to you even until this stage. What do you think your biggest challenge personally was, like with Scale or with anything until then?
On a technical level or on a life level?
Let's do both. Let's do both.
Sure. I mean, on a life level, I would say like my greatest weakness is having a lot of ADHD and never being able to like settle on one thing. So it was hard for me to concentrate on anything really. And that means a lot of breadth versus depth in most of my skills. But also like, I don't think that Scale would have been successful if like, it wouldn't have really happened if Excel didn't literally put their foot down. I was like, here's money to get us to do it. Yeah, I would say I'm not the smartest person in the world. So like I was always comparing myself
You're
to my like
being
little
very
brother. I
humble
was very
here.
insecure on a life level for a long time.
Interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
it's always obviously I think very highly of you and your intelligence and your accomplishments, but I know you're being humble there, and I appreciate you for opening up with something like that.
I compare myself to my little brother, who someone should hire if they're in this chat. I mean, he skipped 6 grades in math. He's a genius. He's at Caltech. So like, was always comparing to that my entire life.
Anybody hiring? Let us know. You were so then you worked on Scale, and what did you end up doing next? What was your transition from there? Actually, before you explain it, let's just remind everyone. So Scale did end up being extremely successful. What is it currently valued at publicly?
You guys can read the information article.
The information article? Okay. I'll look it up, but it's valued over $1 billion now. So then you transitioned out, and go back to your point there.
Yeah. So then I was initially going to just work on another company. So my friend Jared, you know Jared, I think.
Yeah, I actually talked to him because he was working on something very similar to what we did.
Yep. So we were like, hey, let's go build a company together. But I think I was a little burnt out. So eventually I was like, hey, I'm burnt out. I think I need a few months off. And then afterwards, I think I realized that he really, like, we had very different interests in what we wanted to build. Then, and I was just working on side projects a bunch again. So that I was like, well, how do I scale this? I always wanted to do venture or try venture at some point in my time. And I was like, I've done a lot of things in tech. I've been a designer, I've been an engineer, I've been a founder, like a PM, but I've never done like full-time venture. So let's try this thing out. So then I had been investing a little bit of money before, but then, and I was asking a friend for deal flow. So my friend Dave, and he was like, hey, I want to do a venture fund too. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. And we just sat down, we put a deck together, and then within 3 days, we had our first capital commit, and then ended up raising a small micro fund, 8.5 million. We're now doing another one, like about to fundraise for fund two, which is going to be a lot larger.
Well, and, congratulations. It seems like it's going really well. So the name of your fund is Back End Capital. So you've been working on this angel fund. So can you tell us a little bit about your investing philosophy and what you look for in the founders that you back?
Yeah, so I'd say that the main thing I look for is I judge them on how brilliant of an engineer they are, both in a sense of like how technical, like can they build the entire product on their own, but like if they can hire the people to build the product as well. So like I guess like how good of salespeople they are, or they're so talented that like everyone just wants to work for them. And then in terms of spaces I like, just developer tools, B2B SaaS, enterprise. I don't do much consumer, but I'll occasionally do consumer like Botezlive, and then occasionally go off thesis and invest in non-software. Like these two gay guys pitched me on a new type of bidet because apparently toilet paper does not clean your butt, and bidets also don't clean your butt.
Wait, what is the name of this so I can pull it up? Because I was showing Pop Shop Live.
Cheeky Clean. I don't know if it's Googleable right now. Let me check.
Stealth Company.
Yeah, well, they're basically about to help make buttholes cleaner.
They're going to make buttholes cleaner. Okay, that is not a pitch I've heard in some time.
It was a great pitch.
You're like, I'm convinced I need one of those in my life. Okay, sorry. So you said you don't invest too often, but you did in Pop Sugar and then in this Cheeky Clean.
I don't invest in consumer very often, and I almost never invest in physical goods.
Interesting. And is that more because of your background? Obviously, you worked in B2B first, or is it for something else?
I think consumer is generally more of a moonshot, especially going early stage. And then as for physical products, I think that SaaS just wins because it's less capital intensive, and the founders, if they're both engineers, can survive off of ramen for years.
You know this yourself as well because you're able to survive off of anything at the start. And are there any specific industries that you really like investing in the B2B space, or any industries where you have a unique thesis on?
I mean, just developer tools, and I think machine learning, and very unsexy industries.
So I've heard a lot of people say that they like investing in kind of like these unsexy industries because entrepreneurs often tend to go towards what's a little bit more sparkly and work on that, but there's often a lot more opportunity in some of these B2B industries. Are there any you can give as an example?
Yeah, Trove is so they're doing more transparent compensation at the moment. So they were YC's hottest startup. We were the first people to commit writing a check into them before YC.
And what does Trove do?
So they make compensation packages more transparent for new hires.
Okay. And I see a lot of people in chat who are also trying to ask some questions. So I'm happy to take a couple questions from chat as well. So let's see. Somebody was asking. Oh, this is very specific. Do you have any details on how backend capital works in terms of like your GP or just kind of more of the financial information? Is there anything public?
So we have about 70 LPs, but funds are allowed up to 99 LPs. So these are like investors they're like limited partners. Most of our LPs are engineers, and I asked like how the standard for funds is 2 and 20. So you do 2% management fees for like, let's say however long the fund runs, up to 10 years. And then you get 20% of the carry, which is the profit.
Okay, that makes sense. And some people in here asking, do you have any tips for a high schooler who's working on a startup?
A high schooler working on a startup. This is probably the best advice I actually got in high school. So as a high schooler, if you email anyone, like cold email, you're much more likely to get a response.
Really?
You can start connecting to like almost any VC you want probably, and they're almost certainly going to respond to you. I would make the email like short and simple with just bullet points so they can read through it quickly and it's easy for them to respond to. But I think that like people just adore young, smart, energetic people. So I did this as a high schooler and I got so many responses.
So what's an example of an email you sent out with? Like what was the topic line? What were you trying to get them to reply back to?
Oh, I was just looking for like advice. So I was like, hey, I'd love to connect and hop on a phone. I'm like, have been making websites since I was little. Here's the last one I made, blah, blah, blah. But if you actually have a startup you're working on, I think that you can be much more specific because at that point in time, I didn't. But I was just taking advantage of the fact that I was like this high schooler that had made some money on the internet.
That makes sense. And do you also have any advice specific for people trying to raise a seed round?
If you're trying to raise a seed round, I think that what's new in these times is that there's a lot of micro funds out there. So you don't actually need to go to like a big name VC and get a lead. A lot of people, like these micro funds, will write anywhere between 25 to like, let's say 500K checks, and party rounds are becoming much more common where people are able to raise like even up to 2 million off of tons of funds. And generally with party rounds too, the cap can be like, might actually be higher because micro funds do a lot less due diligence than normal funds, and your process might be shorter as well.
Interesting. So would you say that the trend is seed funding is becoming easier to receive?
I think seed funding is definitely easier now.
Interesting. And the reason for this is just because a lot of people are investing less money, but with a huge party round, right?
It's because there are a lot of micro funds out there right now because everyone is now doing a venture fund.
But if there's so many companies investing at seed, obviously the way that they're going to make money off of this investment is if it does well and they could lead with the follow-on. But isn't there a huge competition for who's going to put on the follow-up capital?
Yeah, so with depending on the size of the microfund, like a lot of seed or microfund strategies is that they're only going to participate in a seed round. They don't do follow-on. Follow-on and ownership is really important for much larger funds. But if you're a small fund and you get enough ownership up front, it's not really needed.
Okay, that makes sense. And I've had people who have been asking about this nonstop because yesterday we did a chess stream with Vitalik, which was awesome. Do you have any thoughts on the cryptocurrency space? Any interest there?
I don't invest within that. Don't have many thoughts around that besides the fact that I'm really sad because I had a bunch of crypto on BTCE, which is an exchange that got shut down, and I never put it in my wallet.
Oh, no.
One of my Theo Fellowship classmates actually created Ethereum. That was also my biggest mistake ever, not investing into his ICO pre-sale.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I think it was like 30 cents a coin.
That's pretty impressive. I feel like the best investors always have a story of a good startup that they passed on, though, because if you're getting access to these top deals, like at some point you're going to miss out on one. So I actually think that's a better sign for investors than when you ask them, like, what's the biggest company they missed on, and they don't have an answer. Yeah. So, I feel like people can trust you more on that. And I'm going to ask another gaming question, then we'll go back to the other topic just because people are really intrigued. Are you into any games?
I used to play StarCraft 2 a ton in high school. I was Protoss, and I was that really annoying person that I don't know how. So I guess I had a female username, and then I could distract people by just like putting stuff in chat, and then I would just like do cheese tactics a ton. Like I remember I beat someone in Masters through a cannon rush because they just got that distracted.
Well, people are really excited about this. I feel like they know what it means. I don't know what it means because I never played StarCraft, but and B-Taunt is a user who's been here for a really long time, and he was super excited for this interview, and he just said, hell yeah, all caps. So it's good to see people getting excited. I have no idea what Lucy's talking about. That's true. I've never played StarCraft, but that was the main game that you focused on, right?
Yeah, it was a fun game. It was like pretty much all of my senior year of high school. Or junior year of high school, yeah.
Got it. Well, so let's talk a little bit about some fun stuff as well. So I'm gonna pull up your Instagram, Lucy.
Oh no!
Oh yes.
What?
Oh yes. So you have like.
Wait, pull up my Instagram.
I'm pulling up the Instagram. It's happening. So Lucy, I feel like you're kind of living a rock star life, okay? You had this startup, it was super successful, you've worked on a ton of projects, now you started out your own fund that's doing very well, you're like always traveling the world. Look at this, I live in hotels. Can you tell us more about where you're at right now and just a bit about your lifestyle?
I'm in LA, which I've been in LA for a while. I'm at the West Hollywood edition in LA. I actually just moved in today. I rushed to move in to be able to do the stream.
Oh, thank you so much for coming in. So you've been able to travel a lot. Why was that a priority for you? I feel like you mix work and life so well.
Well, I haven't really traveled that much this year. So I was in New York to do this hacker fellowship program. So for some context, we got a house and put 19 engineers in a house, and we would just do hackathons with them every single week and then try to mix them up to help them find co-founders. And for me, it was fun because I got to like exercise my ADHD and help a bunch of people work on different projects at once and essentially coach and mentor people. So I was like, this is phenomenal. Then COVID hit, and then I love Barry's Bootcamp. So I thought to myself, where in the world?
Let me tell people what Barry's Bootcamp is. So Lucy is addicted to this class that is supposed to be one of the hardest workout classes there is. And I feel like you're tweeting about it very often. But it's super intensive. It's really hard. And somehow Lucy does like 3 in a day. I honestly don't know how it's even possible. But this is the class that she does. So very, very intense. Go ahead. Go back.
Yeah. So I was just like, where in the world can I go that won't get shut down by COVID, that has a Barry's Bootcamp? And I thought Singapore. So I flew to Singapore. And we also thought that because we wanted to raise a fund too, we're like, okay, Singapore has a lot of potential LPs. And my partner Dave in the fund pretty much forced me to go. So I was like, okay, well, like all 3 things are adding up, so I should just go. So
how long were you in Singapore for?
3 months.
3 months. And didn't it also get shut down with COVID though?
Yeah, I was living out of a hotel room alone, and I started taking Chinese classes because I had no human interaction. So the only time I'd ever talked to a human being was on Zoom with my Chinese teacher, or when the hotel staff came to clean my room.
Wow. Okay, so that was what you did for 3 months, but you were also working on your fund there at the time, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. So do you feel like you're going to continue just traveling and getting all these cool experiences, or do you feel like you might eventually want to settle down into one city?
I don't actually feel like I've been traveling that much. Maybe because it's COVID, but I've been in LA for 4 months. As for settling down in one city, I think I need to figure out which city I want that to be. I have no idea at this point in time.
That's fair. I mean, you've bounced around from LA, New York. You were even in Vegas for a while, so that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I know you're not as interested in investing in consumer companies. That's kind of an area that I've always really been interested in. What advice would you have for people who are interested in the consumer space? So this is very different than obviously like some of the
Yeah.
B2B investments you go
So, I mean,
for.
my philosophy is always you just build a like landing page before you even build out the app because it makes no sense to build out something that you don't know people if people want it or not, and then just start a wait list. And if it's like a B2B company, like ask for their credit card because they should be paying. If this is a consumer startup, if it's something that they'll be paying for, you should also ask for a credit card so they can like reserve their place in line or whatnot.
Hmm.
But I think that you can start seeing success when things go to like third degree connections and fourth degree connections in terms of referrals. And it's not just your direct friend network that's signing up because they're your friends. And when it's going to like third and fourth degree, you probably have something that might work.
That makes a lot of sense. So I guess you're talking a lot about organic growth there. I,
Yeah.
I feel like when we were working on consumer apps in the Valley, there was kind of a split on the consensus of investors. So like half of them would be really impressed if you had organic growth. The others were so burned on consumer that they thought like a ton of growth in consumer now doesn't matter as much because it's already a space that's so saturated and they don't know if there's going to be room for another big social platform or something like that. Do you have any say on which one of those you tend to be more towards?
I mean, I think it's really saturated, but you can't argue against organic growth. So if people are organically finding the platform and it's growing a ton, then that says something. I tend to be more wary of social platforms, though. I love consumer if something is being transacted directly onto the platforms. Like a person is immediately buying something. And examples of this would be like Pop Shop Live, where I mean they're like literally basically Shopify and Instagram Live combined, or even like let's say ClassPass, where that person is buying something immediately.
Yeah, that makes sense. ClassPass, I really loved ClassPass. It's a
Yeah.
product where you can basically work out at a ton of different gyms and it's through one pass, so they're able to create something really cool and people did actually have to pay to start off with it. And let's see, so Ollie H is asking, has Lucy ever risked investing in any smaller companies? I guess smaller companies is not the right word, but what was an investment that you felt like was very risky and was it worth it?
I mean, I think every investment is risky. I mean, the riskiest that we've done is probably the Hacker Fellowship program, which is when we were investing in founders before they had an idea, before they had a co-founder, and we just bet on them entirely as people. And we're like, hey, let's just all throw you in a house and maybe like magic will happen, which I think it did.
Well, that's awesome to hear. What about for people who are living outside of Silicon Valley, especially for maybe founders who are outside of the US? What kind of advice would you give them for being able to raise capital since obviously it might be harder for them?
So what I would do is I think cold emails really do work and people do look at cold emails. If you can get a warm intro, that's obviously better. So I would think like, okay, what like look up every single fund in the valley, like find the micro funds, find the big funds, and then if you can look up a specific partner you want, because I like every single fund has partners that specialize in certain sectors. So you don't want to email like an enterprise partner your consumer startup, vice versa. If you can show a deck and show a product, so link to a website and link to a deck, and if they're interested, they'll probably respond.
Okay, so make sure you know who the right person is to contact.
Yes.
Obviously, put up a good pitch and then probably just keep emailing until somebody replies.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that makes sense. That's really a way to just brute force through it. Has COVID impacted your thoughts on investing at all? Like, have you slowed down or have you stayed at the same pace?
We initially slowed down, but we went back to investing at the same pace. Oh, and then prior to like what I just said, if you launch on Product Hunt, generally like the top three products or so, VCs will look at, and if they think there's potential, they'll just reach out to you. So we actually, like a bunch of VCs reached out to us after we ended up at the top of Product Hunt.
Yeah, and I think that the last thing that you worked on, Campaign With, I asked because actually we did it with part of our stream. We used it to create
Yeah.
a fundraiser to just help people who can't afford bail. And
Mhm.
this you launched on Product Hunt as well, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. And for people watching, so Campaign With is basically something that helps people do online classes and donate the entry fees. Sorry, not the entry, the fee to get in to any kind of a charity. I was using some chess lingo there. Are you still working on Campaign With?
There's a lot of the code that's being reused, but you'll see a new product hunt launch soon.
Oh, that's
Or
exciting.
it can support the same use case, but it's a little bit more extensive.
Got it. That's fair.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the people whose questions you answered are very thankful. So thanks again for doing that, Lucy. You launched on Product Hunt with YC because I know we did as well when we were going through the program, and it's one of the things that's recommended. Was it any difference to launch on Product Hunt when you're part of some kind of accelerator that helps you do it versus just trying to do it alone? Like, say you're someone outside of the valley, you have less connections. What advice would you give for doing that?
Oh, so much. Okay, so first of all, you want a top product hunter to hunt you out. I think Chris Messina right now is like top three product
How do you
hunter.
get the attention of these top product hunters?
So Chris Messina's website actually just lets you book on a Calendly. So he gets booked out like a month in advance, but you can literally just book a day and then he'll launch your product on that day.
He'll launch your product on it, but he can't. How do you spell his name?
Uh, Messina.
Okay,
Let me
Messina.
just, yeah, make sure that I'm not going crazy. Yeah, it
Okay,
is Chris Messina. So it's just his website's chrismessina.me.
here it
And
is.
you can go to the product hunt tab, and then you can just fill out a form and book it on a Calendly.
But he doesn't do all of them, right? He has to like what you're working on.
Uh, I think so. It has to, like, how does it work? So you submit the form and pick an available day, and you get a confirmation via Calendly, but you won't hear from him within until the day before your launch, I guess. It doesn't say. I think you might actually do most of them.
Wow, that's a pretty cool hack. Honestly, I didn't even know about that. So,
Yeah.
good stuff. So, you would so get somebody who's a big product hunter. He has
Yeah.
24K product hunt followers to put it for you.
Yes, and then it also gets weighted more, I think, at least. I like trying to figure out this product hunt algorithm. I'm pretty sure it gets weighted more if someone like him hunts your product. And then afterwards, it's kind of based on upvotes per hour. So you don't want to spam all your friends at once and have them all upvote at once. If you spread it out throughout the day and you have the most upvotes, you should be good to go.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So make sure you're spamming your friends in very specific times. And
Yeah.
I think I'll keep that in mind because originally when we launched on Product Hunt, I think we just spammed emailed people and then like they did
Yeah.
it at the same time.
Well, if you ever do a product hunt launch again, let me know because I've been able to get our founders like the number one spot consistently. So
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you, Lucy. I'm definitely going to keep that in mind. And
yeah.
we have another person who's really been a big fan of you, and he asked, "Are there any charities you like to donate to?"
I did a bunch regarding the BLM movement, but I would say one that I really like is Polaris Project, just because it's related to human trafficking. This year, I guess a lot of it was to like Minnesota Freedom Fund, Bail Project, ACLU, etc.
Yeah, that makes sense with everything going
Yeah.
on at this time. Well, thank you so much for sharing this wisdom that you have from so long. Are there any other like last inspiring words about entrepreneurship that you can share with people who are maybe interested and think that they don't have what it takes or are wondering if they do?
Yeah, I personally just think that everyone should just do it if they're curious because I think it's a lot lower risk than people think. For example, like everyone's like, "Oh my God, you're dropping out. Don't Are you worried about that?" And I think that there's always the option to go back to college. If you quit your job to go do it, like you're going to be able to get another job. The riskiest thing is probably just like you might spend a year or two not having income and like living on couches, but it's easier to do that when you're young. Like when I started, I was literally just living on couches, couch surfing, and I was living off of VC funded food delivery. As in, like, I figured I would just like recreate accounts, like get a new phone number and then like a Twilio phone number, let's say, and then refer myself and then take more money.
Just like whatever it takes for it to work, right?
Yeah. Lived
Um,
off of Soylent.
oh yeah, Soylent. Oh, it's so
Yeah.
gross.
Yeah.
They're doing good things. I personally don't like the taste of Soylent, but that makes sense. And are there any places where people can find you? So we have your Twitter, which I'm gonna link in the chat. Any socials or websites or somewhere people can hang out to see if you have any like cool news coming up.
I mean, my email's public. It's just lucy@backendcapital.com. And it's really just my Twitter and my Instagram.
Okay, well, I'm gonna link both of them. Chad, if you want to keep up with her like glamorous rock star lifestyle, then you can follow her Instagram.
It's really not glamorous.
For COVID, it's about as glamorous as it gets. Okay, it definitely is. And then on Twitter, you keep up a lot more with like kind of the business stuff that you're working on. So we'll just share both of those in case people want to keep in touch with you.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Lucy. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy and like you have to go, so thanks for squeezing in the time.
Thank you so much. Anything for you. What can I say?
Well, hopefully we can catch up at some point when like COVID is over. But
You're in New York right now, right?
I'm actually moving to Texas on December 1st to Austin. So if you want to visit Austin, let me know.
Okay, cool. Because I'm debating whether I want to move to Austin or Miami next.
Well, come check out Austin and see how you
Yeah.
like it. At least because you're always moving around, you never stay anywhere for too long. But Austin winter months have really nice weather, so something like December to February is actually quite nice.
So I don't think Barry's Austin is open, but Barry's Dallas.
I'm closing the stream. Stop basing where you're gonna move on whether they have this fitness class. Okay, stop.
Go to Dallas together.
Yeah, okay. So Lucy's the kind of person who wouldn't move to a city because they don't have her favorite gym there.
But yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll talk about that off stream, okay?
Okay.
We're gonna talk some sense into you. Oh man. All right.
It's really sensible.
Well, thanks again, Lucy. I'll let you go. I know you have to go around 4, so
Okay.
appreciate it again, and I'll be in touch off stream.
Sounds good.
All right.
Love you. Bye.
Bye, Lucy. Take care.
Bye.